Tonight marks the end of an era in the state of Massachusetts. Governor Deval Patrick has officially left the corner office, which he's occupied for the past 8 years. A couple hours ago, he handed over the ceremonial key, the original pewter key, to the door of the governor's office. He also handed over the Butler Bible, left to the office by Governor Benjamin Butler back in 1884. The governor's gavel, made from the original frame of the USS Constitution, and 2 volumes of Massachusetts general statutes dating back to 1860. After all that, Governor Patrick took his final walk through the State House and down the steps, a tradition known as the Lone Walk that also dates back to Governor Butler in 1884. Over the course of 8 years, there are bound to be some ups and downs. And joining me now to talk a little more about that are Mo Cunningham, political science professor at UMass Boston and WGBH contributor, and Frank Phillips, the State House bureau chief for the Boston Globe. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
So, Frank, your paper did a great big look at Governor Patrick's legacy this past weekend. And one of the points that really stood out to me was that even after 8 years in office, relations between the governor and the legislature are more than a bit tense. Why are they still tense after 8 years?
You'd have to ask probably Deval Patrick. It is true that a lot of the legislators felt that they weren't getting the attention, and particularly some of his early supporters, people who had been with him on ground zero, had rallied to him, helped him get elected. It was hard to get in to see him, and it was a style that he dealt with the leadership more directly, and that those in the rank and file were not getting the attention. Why? I don't know. I mean, it's the same question that goes to President Obama. Why do the Democratic rank and file legislators in Washington really dislike? You get them off the record, they dislike Obama. It's the same thing with Patrick. There's a real sort of some bitterness there. In some cases, were these legislators who thought they'd get, appointments in the administration and didn't get the jobs they hoped for? No. These are people who just say, "Hey, I've got a thing out in my district I want to come in and see," or "I've got a program I'd like to get you behind," or something like that. And they walled. Maybe it was the staff, but they walled him off, or he walled himself off from that kind of approach.
Mo Cunningham, you wrote a piece, which I know we published at WGBHnews.org, arguing that Governor Patrick's rhetorical style is one of the things that really set him apart over the past 8 years. We actually have a little video of Governor Patrick speaking at the 2012 Democratic National Convention. He's talking, at the beginning at least, about a group of school kids in Boston. Let's take a look.
They and their cause must have a champion in the White House. That champion is Barack Obama. That cause is the American dream. Let's fight for that. Let's canvass and phone bank and get out the vote for that. Let's go tell everyone we meet that when the American dream is on the line, we want Barack Obama in charge.
So what is it that you think made Governor Patrick's rhetorical style unique?
Well, he's obviously a very exciting speaker, and Frank and I were talking about this earlier. That he can reproduce that on a number of occasions. In that particular speech, one of the parts we didn't get to see is he's talking about how the children of this school, Orchard Gardens School, we're one with them. We can't succeed unless they succeed, and it's in terms that reminded me of John Winthrop's model of Christian charity, the language of biblical religion. It's the second language of American politics, but we don't speak it much. We speak the language of individualism, the language of community that Patrick can speak, again, grounded in biblical sounding religion. He did this with the immigrant children as well. Is a different kind of speech we don't see much out of politicians anymore.
In particular, I would say liberal politicians. They don't seem to be especially good nationwide right now at making a case for aggressive government intervention to make people's lives better. And he really did that.
When he spoke about the immigrant children, he specifically said, "My faith tells me that we are to treat a stranger in our land is to be treated as we wish to be treated ourselves," specifically biblical language.
So, Frank, when it came to getting stuff done on Beacon Hill, whether it was working with the legislature or getting other things done, did that aggressive moralism help or hurt the governor, do you think?
That's hard to judge. I think he certainly had the public leadership. That oracle skill gave him the public leadership skills that a governor really needs. And I think if there's, on the success side of Deval Patrick, it was his ability to give those incredible speeches. He came to me in January of '05. I was the first reporter he approached in a dreary day in January, and I had coffee with him. Said he was going to run for governor. I said, "Oh yeah, great." And
I remember that article.
Do you remember? And we treated it with respect, but I wasn't too excited. I thought, okay. But then I kept on hearing back on the campaign trail from legislators and politicians. And as Mo says, it was inspirational. And he was gaining ground. And then he got to the convention. He gave one hell of a speech. I said, this guy's going to be the governor. But in terms of translating that, it's hard. He gave some great State of the State speeches. He gave some great political speeches at conventions like that and state conventions. And it did give him a base to work with, and he could inspire that base. But perhaps he should have gone back more to it than he really did and used those skills.
I actually wondered, and I'd love to hear what you two think about this, if sometimes that might have hurt his cause with the legislature. I remember when he rolled out his great, big, ambitious transportation plan, he ended up getting some, transportation investment, but not as much as he wanted. He cast it again in sort of moral terms, like, we need to have a grown-up conversation about what we need. We need to bring transportation.
How can you get spiritual about broken down bridges?
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't think it wouldn't work on that one. I think when you get Orchard, the school there, and you get the human services programs. That's where you get to the heart.
Actually, Mo, let me ask you, what did you think of him as an emergency or crisis manager? There were a bunch of things, the Boston Marathon bombings, that 2010 water main break in Weston, the blizzard, I think, in 2013 when he told us we couldn't drive as a state. Some people didn't like that. But how did he do on that front?
I thought, actually, he did fabulously on those things. It showed, contrary to some of the management problems and routine day-to-day things that happened, it showed that he could really manage. And I think even the 2010, the water main burst, I'm glad you bring that up, because I think in the 2010 election, he seemed to be every bit the manager that Charlie Baker was projected at. And so it's only since that term that we've come to find some weaknesses in that. But as a crisis manager, not only did he manage well, he's a reassuring person.
He managed the image, though. He didn't manage the process. He at least gave the feeling he was managing the process, but it was his rhetoric that did, and his style.
All right, guys, I got to ask you to stick around in the green room so we can continue this conversation for about an hour after the show wraps. Thank you both for being here, Mo Cunningham and Frank Phillips.
Thanks for having us, Phil.